randoms keep getting jobs. Don't worry about it. I'm going to say it. I can't wait to say it. I love it. I love it. Go.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Not Bland Show. I'm your host, Dujane Bland, and today we're going to talk a little Commanders and NFC East talk with my brother, Lake Lewis Jr., who has been out at practice and seeing what's new with this football team. It's a new feel. It even feels new from the beginning since the transition. So we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk a little bit about the NFC East as well. Real quick, we're going to talk about this on Tuesday, but catch this show. It is on all of the NHRA streaming platforms, which would be Tubi, Roku, Sling, all the NHRA fast channels. This will debut July 31st. We'll talk a little bit more about it on Tuesday's show. And after a word from our sponsors, we'll go right into Commanders Talk.
Drag racing fans, check out Drag Race Bracket Bonanza. It's the free, family-friendly fantasy bracket game. Now, after final qualifying at every national event, you can fill out your bracket for all the pro classes.
It's free, easy to click on your picks. If you need some help, just hit the randomizer button to fill in the blanks. It's for fun, stay engaged, and pick your winners today.
And let's be honest, all of you individuals who are watching, who are football fans, this is very easy for you guys. You don't need to know anything about drag racing. You just need to know how to fill out a bracket. And on top of that, you win free prizes and you play for free. Where do they do that at? Not very many places. Well, without further ado, he is the president, the emperor, the king of sportsjourney.com. You can see him on ABC News. Where is he not at? It is my guy, Lake Lewis. What's going on, man?
What's up, little brother? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good and happy that football season is back.
Yeah, man. It's that time of year again, and things are really starting to pick up. The practices, the energies, practice is starting to build. And I think fans should be excited for this 2024 season.
Padded practice, first padded practice. How did it feel out there? What was the vibe like?
I mean, they just had pads on. I mean, because they've really been getting after it every day. I mean, this goes back to OTAs. I think that this is a team that the Commanders, where Dan Quinn has really come in and put his fingerprint on the team as far as the makeup and the character and, how they want to get after it. And so just another day in the office, literally. And, they're workmanlike. It's not a lot of show going on, but it is a lot of coaching going on and a lot of instructions. And each position coach, is really hands-on with their units. And a lot of these coaches, these position coaches and coordinators have head coaching experience. So yeah. It's just a nice fit. And DJ, over the years, when we've seen things set up like this, sometimes you might have egos that butt heads with, hey, I was a coach, this is how I did it. It's not like that. They're all rowing in the same direction, and it's just it's a nice look right now.
Yeah, it seems to be a very fresh way to go about business, but it's kind of like what all the other teams in the league do going about business. And, won't mention the other regime or coach, but the fact of the matter is you don't see Dan Quinn clipping his guys in a press conference and taking away their authority to coach their guys. And it seems like the team has really rallied around Coach Dan Quinn and, his staff. It seems like guys are lighter.
Oh no, man, it is. It's even down. I know they don't want me to say it, but even the PR staff, man, we're joking with them now, and it's just it's no more cloud, hanging
Yeah.
over everyone's head. Even us in the media, people thought we were always trying to spew controversy and venom, and maybe that's true for some of our colleagues, DJ. We won't say
Right.
that, but with us, that's never been our style. So I just feel like for once, I'm letting people know this year I'm gonna have a different approach. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sell them just everything's great, it's great, and then they see something different during the season. But what I can tell them is what's great is the fact that they are really having a football outfit for once. Like this thing
Yeah.
is really well oiled. Listen, man, I was talking with Scott Pioli, the former Patriots GM, and we were talking on the sidelines yesterday, and he was just telling me, he was Dan Quinn's guy in Atlanta,
Yeah.
and also Adam Peterson worked for him in New England, and he was just telling me everything you see with both those guys is what you get. He said they're really good at what they do, but they're better people, and that seems to be the prevailing theme that everyone keeps saying is that these guys are even kill, good men. And DJ, I can tell you from just being there, like the way Dan Quinn speaks to you, he addresses you by your first name, and he also, he speaks with his hands a lot. So when he's like talking to us in press conferences, he's constantly doing this. He's really trying to break things down in layman terms. Like he's really
Yeah.
trying to make it as simplified as possible. And I like that because it shows that he's he takes the time to get his message across. And if he's doing that to us in the media, well, you can only imagine what he's doing with his players. He's
Absolutely.
letting them know exactly what their assignments are. So there's no excuses. Shouldn't be on Sundays. Guys looking at each other like this. What were we supposed to be? I don't think we're going to be seeing that this year.
Yeah. Yeah. That is great news. And I know for fans, the biggest concern right now is the offensive line. Got a gem and a quarterback in Jaden Daniels, somebody who I've been on before the draft, thought he was the better quarterback and suited for this outfit. How has the offensive line looked throughout training camp as we've gotten into a little bit? We know they've been physical, pretty much all off season, but how are they looking here in the practices? Mainly a couple of guys in Andrew Wiley and the new guy, Mr. Brandon Coleman.
That's a great question. And I'll say this. In years past, we would just come out and tell you offensive line's terrible. And that they were literally besieged by the defensive line. And unfortunately, it made the defensive line in the past, feel like they were better than what they really were. So It just never worked. Well, what we're seeing now is the offensive line has moments where they really, push around the defensive line. But then there's moments where the defensive line has their way. But there's even practices where they're both able to get in a lot of good work. So what I would say is that I don't think this offensive line is going to be so deficient like most people think. And I say that because, for one, I think Sam Cosmi's a Pro Bowl guard in the making. He should have probably made it last year. Andrew Wiley is a veteran, a Wiley veteran, no pun intended. He's got a Super Bowl with Kansas City. And I think, I don't know if he was utilized properly last year, even though Eric Bieniemy had come in from Kansas City. I just don't know if that was the thing, because that wasn't his strength. And originally they brought him in to try to be a left tackle. So I like what I'm seeing. I really do. I like Tyler Biadasz, who's the center they brought in from the Cowboys as a free agent. Really good communicator. He seems to really click well with Jaden right now. So, you might have that center spot shored up. And then, of course, you have Cosmi and you have Wiley. But obviously the talk is Coleman and Cornelius Lucas, at left tackle. I've said this, and me, I've been saying for the longest time, I thought Lucas should have started there last year. They didn't give him the opportunity until late in the year, and he showed that he could do it. He's not going to be Trent Williams. No one is. No one in the league has ever been Trent Williams. But for the most part, they have a veteran there. And I think with Coleman, he's had moments. He's had really good flashes at that position. I kind of see Lucas winning that out. I do. And I actually could see Coleman being moved over to right tackle. And because you want him on the field. You want him playing. So that could be what you're doing. But don't forget about Trent Scott. There's other players that they're mixing and matching right now. Ricky Stromberg, as a guard. They're mixing guys around. Dieter, there's so many guys, and we're talking about depth now, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's something that they lacked in previous years as well. You really can't be in this league and have your first line of defense be your only line of defense, because we all know that guys are going to get dinged up. Guys are possibly going to need to be shifted around. And you need to have that available depth to continue not only to protect your prize and your quarterback, but to even remotely run your offense to some, without any drop off, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's going to be. I don't think this offensive line is going to be as poor as they were last year. I just don't. Some of its maturity with some of the younger guys who were thrown into the fire last year. But I just think that with Cliff Kingsbury and the way he's coaching them, and like you said, I mean, they've got a dog at quarterback, and a guy that he's not running around in practice. You're not seeing that. You're not seeing the God-given ability to improvise, and do impromptu, off-schedule plays. That stuff he's going to be doing on Sundays. He's not doing that in practice. Right. He's just hitting people in the pocket, boom, boom, boom. But when you get that other element of him being able to take off on you, that's going to help your offensive line, because they don't have to hold blocks now for 3 seconds. They can get back 2 seconds, and he's already getting rid of the ball within 2 seconds as is right now. Imagine if in 2 seconds he's decided, I'm taking off now. That's not really anything offensive linemen can do but sit back and watch.
Exactly.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing plays out. But I don't think, if you asked me at this time last year what I saw after maybe 4 or 5 practices, training camp practices, I would have given the offensive line a 2.5 grade out of 10. Seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I saw that from you, even Candy Waller. There was a big level of concern last year, right from the start of camp, that this offensive line looked very questionable. So I know fans are happy to hear about that. What about the other side of the line? It's been rough for Payne and Allen throughout their career here in Washington. Allen, spoke out several times last year, speaking out his frustration. What do these guys feel like? And obviously, I believe we've seen some footage. We've seen some stuff and pictures from our guy Serge. They look good, and they are in really good shape.
Oh man, I mean, their bodies have been resculpted. Chad, who's a weight trainer for Washington. He's really done a really good job with them. And I think these guys understand too that there's going to be some heat on them for playing time, because Johnny Newton is an absolute bruh. I mean, he's something, and his burst getting off the ball is second to no one on this roster. It's impressive. And I think for him, for Johnny Newton to be able to come in and play alongside John Allen and Daron Payne. It's not going to always be they're always rotating. They may be on the front at one point as a 3-3-4 package, or even you move Allen to one end and you move Newton to another end, and you still have Payne and maybe Ridgeway or something in the middle. So I'm liking what I'm seeing. I think these two guys understand that they have a chance to orchestrate a massive turnaround for this franchise. And I think John Allen, being from the area, being from literally right up the road from where they practice, he understands that he understands the history of this franchise and where it was. And I think he probably feels closer to the old days with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters in there. And Joe Witt Jr., of course, Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, Anthony Lynn is there. Bobby Ingram is there. Ken Norton Jr.'s there. I mean, they've got a hell of a coaching staff put together. So I think a lot of these guys are excited to be coached properly and be put in positions to make plays and not be asked to do things that they're not comfortable doing, but be turned loose doing the things that they're great at.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this Commanders team versus where Dan Quinn came from in Dallas, the one thing that they have, and I spoke about this with Wole on his show last week, they've got some beef. There's some meat on the bone on that defensive line. Really Dallas was predicated on a lot of speed, and when they got against big offensive linemen, they were dominated. That's the reason why they took the loss. People make fun and we poke fun, but that's the reason why they took the loss in the playoff game. The offensive line was just stronger and bigger, and can negate that speed. I really like what I'm going to be seeing from Jamin Davis and the way they're going to be using him, along with really a lot of the other guys, Bobby Wagner included, Lavu as well. You won't be seeing these guys lining up in the same spot, everybody come out of the break and just in the same spot every time. We're going to see a lot of different combinations with this front seven.
DJ, man, I joke with people all the time and say they were so scripted and so predictable on defense. You go back and watch tape, the opposing offensive lines are never pointing at guys. They're never saying, I got this guy, I got that guy, because they already knew where the person was going to be. And I'm dead serious about that. Watch tape and you'll see. And you watch most teams, the offensive line, the center, they're pointing out assignments to people. Other opposing offenses didn't do that. Tyreek Hill said he was surprised, how they played him in the secondary. And then he thought they would make adjustments, and he said, and they didn't. And he just kept deucing them, So I'm just like, what were we watching? Well, now it's totally different. And I want to throw a name out there, man. Jamin, I think will have a resurgent year, but Jamin might be, listen, man, Jordan McGee, rookie from Temple, he's like that. And great kid, man, just a great kid, but he's got some burst out there, and it's a violent burst. So within space, it's just like you can't teach certain things like that. So you think of McGee and Luvu and Bobby Wagner, and of course Jamin. That linebacker room overnight, man, has gone from being one of the league's worst to potentially the league's best, literally just like that.
And what's important is they have a leader in the locker room in Bobby Wagner. And I think we talked about this a lot last year and in previous years too. There really just wasn't anybody in the locker room that is going to demand or gain the respect of another, because no one in the locker room did anything. They were all losers.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that, man. And we know a lot of these guys personally. We don't like throwing anybody under the bus, and we're not. But we still have a job to do. And I've always said this: John Allen and Terry McLaurin weren't their leaders. They're maybe lead by example for what they do on the field. Yeah. But Terry has learned to become more vocal as his career has gone. Jonathan was more like talking out of frustration, as opposed to like, we need to do this, do that. Well, Bobby Wagner's not like that. He's not a yeller or a screamer either, but he's a guy that, if he were to quit tonight, right now playing football, he's first ballot Hall of Famer. And people saw his best days are behind him. The man was still top 2 in the NFL last year in tackles. So he did something that, literally 100 other linebackers didn't do. So don't tell me his best days are, long gone. No, he still can hoop. I mean, ball on the field. And I think for him to be able to now to be surrounded with some other guys that have something to prove, like to me, Frankie Louvu was a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker. I truly believe that he's got that kind of potential, and he knows it. And he knows that playing alongside Bobby Wagner now is just going to elevate his game. That's a tandem that is to be watched here, to be reckoned with. And like I said, the young guy McGee to go along with Jamin, who should feel rejuvenated, that he's going to get coached and used properly. They should have a really special linebacking core.
Now, this front seven, being and having so much talent. This is where I've said this. I preach this all the time. I don't need great corners. I just need good corners that are disciplined and are able to execute when needed what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
That front seven should enable and take a lot of pressure off those guys on the outside, especially a guy in Emmanuel Forbes, who I felt like they kicked that poor boy in the balls and took his confidence.
Yeah, they left him out to dry on an island many a night, and that's not what you do. And they took his confidence. Well, his confidence is back now because he's being utilized the way he's supposed to be. I mean, this guy's not a big guy. We know that.
Right.
He's more of a speed guy, more of a ball hawk, with his eyes. So he's going to be looking in the backfield a lot, but you got to make sure you got coverage over top of him. You got to make sure you don't have him on an island with the AJ Browns of the world. I mean, it was like, watching, Pee Wee football player, checking an elite college player. And I don't mean that because of his skill set. I just meant his size.
Right.
That mean, who in Philadelphia looks just like him? Devonta Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
But they never put him on him.
No.
It was just poor. And Benji St. Juste should have been on AJ Brown. And but I'm going to tell you another name. And I keep telling people this, and I know you're going to say, oh, here we go. You and Wole always do this. I mean, obviously, you can look right up there. You already know what's coming.
We are.
But, yeah, of course. So, but I'm saying this. Tariq Castro-Fields has grabbed their attention big time. And through OTAs, you saw it. Through minicamp, you saw it. You saw him getting some first-team reps. And yesterday, I know it was him and Emmanuel Forbes. Listen, I'm not saying he's starting, but I'm not saying he's not starting. And I think
he could be the Deron Bland of this team.
Thank you. And he's grabby, nice size to him, and that's what they want in their system. They like grabby corners. I mean, if you go back to Dallas and you look at Bland, came on the scene last year, broke an NFL record. And then, of course, before that, you had obviously Diggs, who got injured last year, and he's back in Dallas. But those guys were ball hawks. They were getting interceptions. They were disrupting routes. They didn't have them playing 10 yards off guys. They had them up. And that's the other thing. So many times in practice, you see Benji St. Juste right in front of his guy. You see Emmanuel Forbes right in front of his guy. Castro-Fields, Christian Holmes. All these corners are locked up on the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, man, I'm seeing something I never saw here.
Yeah. You got to start locking people up. This free release stuff with these guys, these wide receivers in the NFL don't do nothing but get you burnt. You get in the back pedal and they got a free release, they're going to blow right by you. So yeah. I like the physicality. I like grabby corners because they are very disruptive in
and it
route
means
running.
They're trying.
Exactly.
They're giving you effort. If you're just sitting back and watching guys run by you, but if you're up there, I remember I go back to like a guy like Breland. People say, man, he was always getting pass interference calls and stuff. And I'm like, listen, he was a guy that was giving you effort out there on the field. And that's all you want. And I think that they identify that. And if you look at the numbers, if you look at, what Dan Quinn did in Atlanta, you look at obviously what he did with the Legion of Boom in Seattle with Richard Sherman and, Cam Chandler and Earl, you know what I'm talking about. They had all these great guys that were physical in their secondary, and that's what they want right there.
Yeah. My guy, Monday Morning Racer, you're right. They will perform, but they definitely will fall short, and we'll get to them here in a little bit. I got a lot to say about that. On the offensive side of the ball, obviously, Jaden Daniels is the big topic of discussion for, fans, because the quarterback is always the big topic here in Washington. But he's got some guys that I've been hearing that have been stepping up at the wide receiver position outside of the three that we think will be penciled in as starters, as Jahan, Terry, and likely maybe Luke McCaffrey. But there's some other guys that are turning heads as well.
Yeah, and again, you guys going to hear me say it again. I said it last year, but I think he got injured. But Tinsley from Penn State, another Nittany line in the building. But no, he's making plays. He's really making some tough plays. And I think a guy like that might be putting a little pressure on a guy like De'Ami Brown, who kind of really needs to show something.
Agreed.
So a lot of these young guys, what is it, Zacchaeus, who they brought over. He's a veteran. He's a guy that so they have some pieces in the building. A guy like Dak Milne is back, and we don't want to see him returning punts,
no.
but he's a good route runner, and he's a guy that can find spots in the middle of a field. So they have different things, and they're going to have options, as far as who does what, as far as who they keep. And not to stray off the offense, but it's just not the offense of, wide receivers. It's everywhere. There's going to be some surprise cuts or some surprise guys that go to the practice squad that you maybe a year or two ago were thinking could have been frontline players for this team. But that's the difference here. You and I have always said this. Some of these players here were glorified as great football players, not around the league where they recognized as that. Maybe talented, but not like I'm game planning for these guys. They got some guys now that you might have to look at the film a little bit longer. And if they're put in the right positions, that's going to be even better.
Yeah. Ertz adds a nice, solid veteran who has performed. But, man, I'm going to tell you, I really like Ben Sinnott. And I would rather over Cole Turner and John Bates give me Amani Rogers.
You might get that. I mean, once again, that's 5 tight ends you just named, and that was a room that didn't really give them much. Last year or the year before, guys were injured, guys were dropping passes, guys were considered a little soft. I had to emphasize the T on the end of that, so now you look at Sinnott, who they drafted from Kansas State. I mean, he was a guy that was known to be a really good blocker as well, outside of catching the ball, kind of a Chris Cooley type, and then of course, Zach Ertz, 3-time Pro Bowler, and the people again are saying that his best years are behind him. Maybe so, but I think he still has some really good years ahead of him too. And I think that he could be the key to the cog, for Jaden Daniels, as his security blanket. And Jaden and him have a rapport already. They talk all the time during practice about things. If a play is made, they're talking about it. And that's that veteran leadership that clearly Adam Peters and Dan Quinn knew exactly what they were doing. Cliff Kingsbury as well, because he played for him, and he played also for Bobby Johnson, who's here. So you got some things that could really click for this team instantly.
Yeah, and I think most importantly, the man who is at the helm, they haven't labeled him the day one starter. Look, he's the day one starter. If he's not the day one starter, there's a problem.
No,
okay?
he's
the day one starter.
Let's put that to sleep right now. Barring, God forbid, an injury, he's the opening day starter. It's not even date. And even Marcus Mariota knew what he was signing here to come to.
Yes.
I mean, and I said Bobby Johnson. I was thinking of Bobby Johnson, who used to be here. I'm talking about Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, think of all the eyes and ears and tutelage that Jaden Daniels getting, that maybe a Sam Howell or maybe someone, maybe the late Dwayne Haskins, someone did not get. You're talking about Cliff Kingsbury, former head coach in the NFL, who's coached the Baker Mayfields, the GOAT in the coming, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray. I mean, he's had some dogs at that position, guys who, by the way, eerily similar game-wise to Jaden.
Right.
Okay. So you got that. So now you have Anthony Lynn, Coach Lynn, who was a coach for the Chargers. Great running back coach too. So now he's here. So that's going to help, Brian Robinson Jr. And what? When you think of Austin Eckler, he was with Coach Lynn. So that's going to help. Now you look at some of the other things, those linebackers. Well, Ken Norton Jr. was a dog.
He was. Oh, my goodness.
Right. So now they're going to benefit from that. And then you have a player on the field that's a coach too, and Bobby Wagner. So you have that. And then you look at the defensive line, Daryl Tapp, who played in the league. He's come off the edge. So now he's got all that energy coaching those guys up. I mean, Bobby Ingram, wide receiver, played in Chicago, was an All-American at Penn State. He's coaching the receivers. I'm just looking at this thing, man. Oh, and by the way, they don't have a secondary that came right off the high school field. So just put
exactly.
They've got somebody that did it.
Exactly.
So that's all I'm saying, man. This is just it's a professional outfit.
Right. And I think when I look at the coaching staff, I've likened it to Coach Gibbs. Coach Gibbs was great because he knew how to put great people around him on his staff so he can do what he's supposed to be doing, and that's coaching the team as a whole. It wasn't a complete focus on just offense, wasn't a complete focus on just defense. He always had people that he could trust to teach and run, and it allowed him to be the head coach. And I think that's what made Coach Gibbs great.
Yeah, I mean, you have, as a coach, as a leader in general, whether it's at work or wherever, you have to know when to be a leader. You have to know when to step in when it's needed, but you also have to know when to back off too.
Yep.
I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but they've had some guys here that arms were folded and it was my way, know, and even some of their position coaches, arms folded, it's my way. And there was no flexibility. So when the other team said, okay, your way is not working, we're doing what we want against your way.
Exactly.
There was no adjustments. And you mentioned Coach Joe Gibbs. Everyone knows what made him great was that he made adjustments at halftime, and they came out with these narratives of games. And I feel like that's what you're going to see this year. For everyone that's out there that still throws a little shade at Dan Quinn's been uber successful as a coach.
He has been. And
you have to stop that. You really do. This guy was a defensive coordinator for, a two-time Super Bowl participant with the Seahawks in back-to-back years. They won one, lost the other one, to New England. And that wasn't on him. That was the other side of the ball, not doing what they were supposed to do. Hand off to Marshawn, you get 2 Super Bowls. So, you think of that. Look at what he did in Atlanta. He took them to a Super Bowl. Yes, his defense did have, did allow for Tom Brady to come back from 28-3 at halftime and win that in overtime. But I think a lot of people liken that more to what Kyle Shanahan wasn't doing on his side of the ball than to what Dan Quinn's defense was doing on his side. And then, of course, in Dallas, the last 2 years, they've been a top 3 unit as far as creating turnovers and just, creating havoc out on the field, doing it with an undersized defensive line. So if you can get anything like that in Washington and you have now an oversized defensive line, you got a lot of girth now, man, this thing could really shock some people. They're my surprise team. And I would say this, not seeing them, I would say this team is going to be a surprise football team.
I agree. Just looking at things on paper and looking at things around the league. And before we get into around the NFC, this is a good question from Monday Morning Race. So he said, completely off topic, but I don't get to do this often. Stick and ball. He said there has been a massive realignment in college ball for the conferences. Would it be timely for the NFL to do so as well?
You know what? That's a $1 million question to whoever that gentleman was. I've been saying this for the longest time. If you can have Rutgers in the Big Ten and USC and Oregon in the Big Ten, and they're going to be playing cross country like that, these are kids. These are supposed to be student athletes. You care about their time and in the books and stuff, which we know is complete BS. Okay. So now, if you're the NFL, I do think you may have to start to consider that. You don't want to break up the rivalries like Minnesota. In Chicago and Green Bay. And Minnesota might think they have the rivalry with Green Bay, but it's Chicago, Green Bay. You think of Washington, you think of Dallas, you think of New York, you think of Philly. You don't have to break those things up, but I've been saying this for a long time. There was a time when, I'm going to date myself here, but there was a time when the Cardinals were in the NFC East.
Yes, I remember that.
There was a time when that was the case. And, it didn't make sense. Even when they moved out, they were in St. Louis then, but when they moved out to Arizona, that's when they made the change. But I've always said, if you want to do this thing right, you probably would make the NFC East. You'd break up something, but you could assure that they play each other, because ultimately they're going to have 18 games anyway.
Yep.
So you can have one of those games be the rivalry game, so each fan knows that they're going to always see that game. So, for instance, Washington could play Dallas, but I think Dallas wouldn't be part of the NFC East. I truly believe that. I think your NFC East would probably be New York, Philadelphia, Washington, and the Panthers. If you really wanted to do it, have 5 teams in the NFC East, you could put the Falcons in there, So that's just from a geographical standpoint, it would make more sense. And then you could put the Cowboys either in the NFC West. You could do those things, or you could do it, or NFC South. It would just make more sense to have Dallas playing New Orleans or something like that.
Right. I agree. I think it is time to reevaluate things with the amount of games that they're, trying to get to with 18. There are some things that you can keep the rivalries, but maybe you need to reevaluate how certain teams that are in these, divisions, that it seems to be a little bit of oddball or where they are. They're kind of off the beaten path. And I think that would actually not only help out with team travel, but I think that would be very interesting and kind of make things a little bit more confined when it comes down to divisional play.
Well, think about it, DJ. I mean, if you do 18 games, remember, we're just 2 years removed from 16, a normal 16-game schedule.
Yeah.
The old heads would tell you they remember 12 games, they remember 14 games, and then went to 16. So what I would say the league should really take a hard look at is, if you're going to move to 18 games, you do your realignment. You realign the league. You realign the teams to be more geographically close. And then you have 2 buys. Each team has 2
Agreed.
Buys.
Yeah.
So now you're maybe you can have 2 rival games. So if you are breaking up a division, say the NFC East and the Cowboys are gone, and the Eagles and the Giants and Washington want to see them play, I don't know if the Cowboys-Giants rivalry is as big as obviously Washington's. It's not. And I'm not sure if it's as big with the Eagles, if it's bigger than the Eagles, which I think if the Eagles-Cowboys have become a rivalry. Yeah. So to me, let's just say you have 18 games and you have 2 buys. You could have, the Cowboys, Washington, Eagles, whatever, play their rival games after each bye. And those are just the 2 extra games that we've just added over the last couple of years. We've added one, and we're probably going to add another one. So it's not changing anything. It's just that now your normal games will be against people who are closer to you. And I assure you, players are going to like that. The rivalries of old aren't the same. It's just not.
They're not.
The game has changed. Guys are pals on each team.
Mm-hmm.
You have in Washington, it almost would sound blasphemous 20, 30 years ago to think that literally 3-4 Cowboy players are going to sign with Washington, and you're going to pluck one of their coaches, 2 of their coaches.
Right.
That might not sit too well 30 years ago, but now the game is different. I don't think there are rivalries like there used to be. Maybe for short periods, like the 49ers and Eagles, because they've been the 2 best teams in the NFC.
Right.
But I don't know if there's true dog rivalries like it used to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think those days are kind of done. There's no true venom for the opposing rival, that to the point where I'm not even going to sign there. And we don't want to see none of your players. We don't want to see none of your coaches over here in our building. Yeah. It's a little different. Monday Morning Raisin says, I believe it could also promote fan travel. I think there's business opportunities for sure. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to see, you know what it is? It's the model that they did in Major League Baseball. And people were kicking and screaming when they were thinking about that, when they were thinking about a wild card in baseball, and they were thinking about, inter conference play, interleague. People are like, what are you talking about? But you know what? How cool is it to see the Yankees in LA against the Dodgers? Or if you're an old person, I mean, they're probably starting to leave us, unfortunately, because of age. But there were people that remembered when the Dodgers were in Brooklyn, So those are things that I think are good storylines for all of sports to promote the game and give fans of teams who normally would never see those teams in their building, gives them a chance to plan accordingly. And so I agree with your viewer.
Yeah, man. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and for contributing. We appreciate you, Scott. You're always in here. Really appreciate all of you who are tuning in to this show right now. Now we'll go over to the NFC East, and I will start with a team that you spoke about on the After Practice podcast. You guys can catch that anywhere on any podcasting platform. Talked about one of your four, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. They do gain Saquon Barkley. I do think that that's going to help them in the running game. My only problem is I feel like the problem for the Eagles is their head coach in Sirianni, and Brian Johnson was a scapegoat. Now they get another guy in Kellen Moore who is just like Sirianni. Kellen Moore, run to pass ratio, 38.97% to 61.03% pass. That's in LA. I'm sorry. I don't think they're going to be as good as everybody think they are for that reason. And Kellen Moore's had opportunities in Dallas and could not come through for the same reason.
I mean, those are good. Those are all valid points. I just think the Eagles have enough talent on their roster and enough humiliation from way last year ended. Even that head coach who, let's call it, was smug, He
was.
And it came back and bit him in the butt. And I think sometimes everybody needs to be served a little bit of a humble pie. And I think they were served that, and they were deliciously served that. Yes. So the 49ers was the first chef to give it to them. So I think that when you see those things and those things happen to you, it makes you reevaluate, like, damn, were we that good that we could go on autopilot? No, you weren't.
No.
So I think Sirianni probably had to see some things. I agree with you that Brian Johnson unequivocally was a scapegoat. There's no way in hell that they should have had, and I don't mention names with coaches when they don't do well, but a former Detroit Lions coach who stunk it up when he was there, got the gig because of his pedigree and where he came from before. We know that. But yeah, Brian Johnson was definitely made a scapegoat, and the wheels fell off, and that showed you that he probably had more respect in that locker room than I think Sirianni and some of the Eagles brass really realized. Shame on them for that. But I do think, though, from a talent standpoint, if you look at every team in the division, they're the most talented team. I truly believe, if 1 through 53 players. The Cowboys are close. Washington's got some talent. But the difference is, Dallas's coaching staff isn't anything to write home about either.
No.
I'm talking about current staff.
Yeah.
They lost a big chunk of what they did well, and that's in Washington. So it's kind of like Philly to me is stagnant. Dallas took a step back coaching-wise. Washington took a big step up. And the Giants to me are still kind of right there, average and figuring it out with Daboll, what they're going to do up there. So I'm saying this. I think that the Eagles win the division. I do. I think it's going to be very competitive. It's going to be 4 teams really coming at it. But I think the Eagles win it. I think that NFC East streak of 21 straight years, not a defending back-to-back winner, it's going to continue again because I don't think the Cowboys are going to win it.
No.
So to get back to your original thing, though, I think the Eagles they do have a little bit more talent than the other teams, and that should be enough. I don't think the Eagles are going to be going on a 13, 14, win total, something they were doing last year. Looked like they were on their way to doing when they were 11-0, and the wheels were just, greased, and then it just fell off. But I think that they're probably looking at like 11, 12 win. 12 wins you the NFC East this year. I
think so. Yeah, I think so. And I do agree. They are the more talented team in the East. I'll go to the Cowboys. Look, you can't continue to be cheap. And really, to be honest with you, their mismanagement of the salary cap is actually coming to bite them back in the butt here. You got to pay 3 people. And, CeeDee Lamb is looking for his money.
Is
Micah
CeeDee
Parsons
Lamb worth being a third, a top 3 player on your team? Pay
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely not. And here's why.
He's not.
He's a one-trick pony.
He's not a true number one.
No, he's a one-trick pony. Give me he can if you put him in the slot, you can utilize his size to gain mismatches. That's where he has success. But to put him outside and go best on best, my best corner, likely he's not going to win that. He's trying to catch contested balls out there. He's not beating anybody on an island. Never. So
you can get physical with him. That's what you have to do. I don't put him in the same category as a Justin Jefferson or a Hill or, I just don't, and I think he's a really good football player now. Don't get me wrong. But, I use CeeDee Lamb and Terry McLaurin in the same breath so if you ask me, who are you going if you have a dog quarterback, I'm going to have to say Terry because he's never had one and he's still put up the numbers.
Exactly.
That's why I say with CeeDee Lamb, if I'm the Cowboys, you got Dak, you got Micah Parsons, you're going to have to break them off. I would take care of those guys before I would CeeDee Lamb. Agreed.
Because at the end of the day, it's like this. Where is Dallas going to go for quarterback? And don't tell me that guy you got from San Francisco that couldn't get it done there. No, don't tell me that's going to be your guy because I'm going to tell you right now, you fall to the bottom of this daggone division.
I'm telling you what they would do. If Dak wets the bed in the playoffs, if they would make the playoffs, they're going to draft a quarterback. And it would have to be a high draft pick and Dak would be walking. There's a messy situation if you're the Cowboys, but being cheap has got them now having to be expensive.
Yep, it really has.
Yeah. Really has. Yeah.
I want to know though, when are we as organizations going to start saying no? And I'm tired of this market value stuff because market value got the Giants paying for an average to below average quarterback in Daniel Jones.
Well,
called how he was going to be all the way back in his Senior Bowl days. Called it, and it's lived up to what I've said. And you overpaid for an average quarterback. So when are we going to stop paying guys this market value when the market value don't apply to those guys?
Well, I think unfortunately it's the nature of the sport that they're playing. You can't guarantee contracts in the NFL. You can't because it's a violent, volatile sport, and guys get hurt all the time. If you make it through a season unscathed, you were extremely lucky. You probably spent a lot of time on Saturday evenings in chapel. So it just doesn't work that way. Guys get hurt. It's part of the business. So because of that and because of the nature of those type of injuries, you can't guarantee guys that like NBA money or maybe baseball money. You can't. So I think what happens is it changes is if you – this might sound crazy, and I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, but I think if you shorten contracts in the NFL, if you give guys 3-year contracts with maybe 2 years guaranteed money, and then the third year is obviously a year that the team can decide if they want to extend or whatever. It's set up that way, but it's no guaranteed money.
Right.
So what I'm saying is if you keep that model, but you guarantee the first 2 years of a contract, you might have guys being able to ride out their contracts. The shelf life of a running back is 2 years. So if you do have guaranteed contracts for 2 years for all players, and then the other thing I think the league really needs to explore is having the quarterback position not count against your salary cap, because let's face it, the league wants to promote the quarterbacks in the NFL. They're the faces of their franchise, and rightfully so.
Right.
So but you can't have a quarterback eating up potentially $70 million of your cap. You just can't.
Right.
So I think if you allow these players to get guaranteed 2-year contracts, you won't have to worry about big, huge signing bonuses. Because and I know that's what the players go for now. DJ, you could give me a 5-year contract for $100,000, 5-year deal for $100,000. But if I got $75 million signing bonus, we good.
Exactly.
But you can't do that though, And also, when you give somebody that kind of signing bonus, you also get a little less effort sometimes too.
I agree. We've seen that here in Washington a lot.
Yeah, in football especially. So it's
yes.
not. I've had players tell me flat out, I get that kind of money, you might not see me hit the hole as hard. and it's sad, but it is because of the nature of the sport. It's a violent sport. NBA guys, 3-4 years, you can make 200-300 million more to keep playing something you love, and you're not getting hurt. Yeah, man, they got load management in the NBA too.
Yep,
doing
exactly.
that. I'm doing like LeBron. I'm doing 2 years until you roll me out in a wheelchair and I literally can't get up out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, I would do that too. New York Giants in this division. I'm sorry, I'm not sold on Dayball. I watched a little bit of the Hard Knocks. I don't like the way that they do business, and I definitely don't look at Dayball as a leader at all. He is, to me, very unprofessional, and I thought the way he handled the quarterbacks in those meetings, especially Jaden, was kind of smug and unprofessional. Look, they've got an average quarterback. They let Saquon Barkley walk because they thought that he wouldn't garnish the money that he got. And now you're telling me that Devin Singletary, no offense to him, guy works really hard, but at the end of the day, he's not between the tackle runner.
Well, and he's not Saquon.
Exactly.
You know, Saquon has a lot of miles on him, and he's been injured, and he's older. But motivation is something, man. When you plan for something, you run harder.
Yeah.
And he's going to run harder in Philadelphia.
He will.
Because he knows he's going to be playing for something. And he also knows he's going to have a chance to play against those guys who let him walk 2 times. Make sure that's understood. He's going to do that. And you could see that the GM didn't want him. It was obvious. You know, he didn't believe in him anymore, and they wanted to lowball him, you know, and the Eagles came calling. Again, I don't know if the Giants, I like what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. I like Brian Burns.
Agreed.
I like Thibodeau. I really do. I like some of the stuff that they're doing. I like the kid Banks they got from Maryland as a corner. Mm-hmm. You know, so they've got some things that they're starting to develop on the defensive side of the ball. They brought in a guy from Tennessee to be the defensive coordinator. So, you know, who coached with Vrabel. So they're going to do okay defensively. But that offense, man, I know you went out and got Malik Neighbors, who's a dog. Yeah. But Malik Neighbors going to be like, damn, I don't have Jaden throwing me the ball. Who's throwing me the ball?
Interception guy, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and I said this before. People think I'm nuts for saying this. Yes, he has a history of being injured over his career and not staying in the same systems over and over. But I thought Tyrod Taylor was giving them their best opportunity, man.
Agreed.
I believe that. Yeah.
I thought he got the raw. I thought that was a raw deal.
If
anybody I'm going to keep, it has to be him as a backup. I think
because
that's another thing.
Daniel Jones's injury history.
Exactly.
And my thing is, you maybe not even have to rush Daniel Jones back right away.
Right.
But now you have no choice. Daniel Jones has to play week 1. Yeah, and he might play on bad wheels. So that's a bad miss for the Giants. I know they were trying to move up at times, but really were they though? They were saying who was dumb enough to move back for them. Yeah. But nobody.
And that Washington didn't exist this year.
Yeah. Well, guess what? They're gonna get that guy twice a year too.
Yep. I don't like what I'm seeing there offensively, and I think they really are the bottom feeders of this division. I think all the other teams, even with Mike Zimmer as defensive coordinator in Dallas, their back end is just too good, and I don't see enough from them offensively, New York, to even think about contending for any type of division. I really do see them sitting at the bottom.
Not even a wild card. Nope.
No, I see them sitting at the bottom. Unfortunately, this will not be a year where 4 teams out of the NFC East will go to the playoffs. Three definitely will. I agree with you on that.
I think all 3 of the other teams are making the playoffs.
Yeah. I think just Washington's coaching alone gets them at least 3 more wins.
Awesome point right there, DJ. Awesome point. And what's that? You know, how many did you have last year? 4?
4.
So that gets you 7. I said this right now, just from the talent and what I'm seeing, they're no worse than a 9-win team, 10 wins maybe. Washington's going to be right there in that 9-10 range. If things really go well and they don't have any injuries, maybe 11. But I think realistically, Washington's a 9 and 8, 10 and 7 football, and that's going to get you in the wild card.
Yep. I agree. I with coaching, that's 3 wins. I think your quarterback definitely gets you some wins as well. Just because of the simple fact that I love his head down approach, and when you talk to him, after the draft, just listen to him talk and his demeanor, how his demeanor has been here throughout the time he has been in Washington. That's something that's endearing to people, and people want to rally around. Robert, love the guy, very talented. It's all the extra stuff, the try hard stuff that turn people off. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what Jaden brings as a man, and as his character really is going to make things a lot easier for people to rally around. He has the talent.
Yeah, DJ, he doesn't look to the sidelines. He's not watching us. He's not watching us watching him. And right. I can say that's a nice, refreshing thing. His eyes and his attention is on the field where it should be with his teammates, and he just has a poise beyond his years. And I'm not just saying that. I know Caleb Williams is the same way. But mm-hmm. These are two mature young men that Chicago and Washington have that are just they're gonna open some eyes with their maturity for their age.
Yeah, and lastly, I'll say this: it's interesting this year. This is the first time, I think, in a very long time, if ever, that we've watched quarterbacks go 1-2. I'll even talk about the Drake Mays of the world. They went to teams that have talent. They're not talent deficient. They're not teams that the guy has no chance. He'll be shell-shocked in a year and won't be worth anything in year 2 because he sees the rush all the time. They went to teams that actually have talent around them and just need a quarterback to be able to deliver the football in a good manner. So I think this draft class of quarterbacks could be one of the best that we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, they have that potential too, B. I think all of them are going to be, really good professional quarterbacks. And I think 3 or 4 of them might end up becoming franchise quarterbacks. I truly believe that.
Well, Lake, it's been one heck of a show. I appreciate you taking the time. The fans will definitely be looking forward to all the great stuff that comes out here at Sports Journey. Tell them where they can follow you at and what you got coming up next.
Sure. You can follow me on social media at Lake Lewis Jr. So it's Lake Lewis Jr. And that's on all social media, X, Twitter, IG, Facebook. It's all on there. And you can follow my podcast, the After Practice Podcast. You can subscribe to it via YouTube and watch it. Or if you want it in audio form, it's pretty much on every major carrier, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. And then, of course, sportsjourney.com, be on there. May not be on there in full capacity. And coming up here has got something we're going to be talking about soon. But it's still my baby, so I'm always going to support and push it. But I've got great guys like DJ on there now who the onus is to see them more now. And I'm excited for you guys becoming the face of it, and keeping this thing running,
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to the things that we have coming down the pike here. Long time coming, but we worked hard to get here. So super excited about what the future holds here with Sports Journey. Well, Lake, thank you so much. And we'll be talking again soon before the regular season starts.
Absolutely. Good seeing you, my brother. Take care, man.
You too. Lake Lewis, everybody. Man, gotta love football. one of the up and coming and premier sports journalists out there, my former co-host Karita Parks. She's going to be talking Ravens football and AFC North, and we will talk some, Sonoma Nationals. Man, that was fun to watch. The action was amazing. Wow. You got Antron getting close to tying Larry Dixon Jr. in the all-time win list. Nat Smith gets the win, and all the MSR bikes look good. Still says that Vanson Hines is sandbagging. We get to talk to him on the Power Hour still. We're going to talk about that. But, man, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for all your participation. It is absolutely overwhelming, the support that we get here. Guys like Scott, even my colleague, Monday Morning Racer. We have Lonnie in the building. We have Drag Racing Mayhem a lot of times in the building. So I really appreciate all the support. Without you, we are not anything. Well, until tomorrow, when we come back and talk a little bit of NFL and drag racing, you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Bland Show. I'm Dujane Bland, a Sports Journey production. Have a great afternoon. Watch some Olympics. We're out of here.